Hi there, this is Dominic from Grail Gnosticism. I've got a lot of work to do to promote my new book, and I've actually got a new book called MT Sayings and Epistles, which I hope to share with you very soon. I haven't done any what they call SEO, which is search engine optimization for my website. I haven't joined any web rings or anything like that, so I've got a lot of work to do in promoting my website such as it can be promoted, and the rest I think is just time. But I actually feel a bit like a drop in the ocean. I feel like someone looking up at the stars and feeling very small, because I don't know. I've made what I think to be quite a big contribution to Gnosticism and the legend of the Holy Grail. But of course, there's two things there. One, it probably isn't much of a contribution. You just think it is. There's people that have done better, made better contributions, and in any case, secondly, it's not a race, it's not a competition. It's not the X factor of Gnosticism here. It's only people's opinions and views and interpretations and commentaries on existing Gnostic texts, which have been shown to be genuine, whatever genuine actually means as well in the history of Gnosticism. There's no canonicity attached to Gnosticism exactly, even though there are probably core beliefs which are held by most Gnostic groups, or all Gnostic groups for that matter. Anyway, I was looking at Rosicrucian groups as well, and Gnostic groups, and my goodness, there's a ton of information out there, and there's a ton of Gnostic groups out there, and Rosy Cross and Grail legend groups as well. I mean, there's about 52 active and good quality websites for Gnosticism out there, and according to Wikipedia, there's a lot of Rosicrucian groups as well. And I have found a couple of groups that claim that they are authentic Rosicrucianism rather than sort of false or bogus Rosicrucian groups that are out there as well. And this got me thinking about, what could constitute a present day genuine group. I mean, what would the genuine group have to claim, and what evidence would they have to provide in support of that particular claim? So we're looking at a theoretical group here, be it Rosicrucian or Gnostic or magical tradition or mystical school or something like that. And I suppose actually one of the things I haven't got here as a criterion is the original founder. So I suppose the founder is quite important. For example, you'd have to show that your group was connected intimately with the founder of any particular movement. For example, Rosecrans with Rosicrucianism, you'd have to show that your group was founded by Rosecrans himself, if that was possible, and who is Rosecrans anyway. And you'd have to show that not only that you were the same group that had been founded by the founder, and not some splinter group or group that's split off over the centuries. That you'd have to show that letters patent from the actual founder to show that you were the genuine group, and therefore by lineage connected to the actual founder of the particular movement that you represent. So that will be a very, very important thing to have to show. And they'd have to be genuine letters of patent, really authenticated almost by a third party or objective party, however that would be done. And I don't know how you would do that really. The second thing, I suppose, with no particular order, is that your group would have to be in possession of a previously unpublished literary source. So you'd have to have in your possession, or in the group's possession, a library of books or one single book that has never been published, or if it has been published, it's been lost. And you have this library or one book in your possession, and you can prove that this library or this book perhaps was written by the actual founder or founders of the particular movement you're representing, and that it's never been published anywhere, but it has been in the world, as it were. It wasn't just stored in a pot in Nag Hammadi, for example. That it's always been in a collection, or in your personal or group's library for centuries and centuries and centuries, and that you're the only group that possesses this source of literary magnificence. And the other thing is that you'd have to show, I think, well, I've got here that you have a secret and original collection of objects as well, which would go with your book collection. That that you have some sort of regalia or magical weapon like a wand or rings or something like that, or sacred or sort of vestments or whatever, that again were connected with the founder or founders, again that are ancient, that have been in your possession for centuries, or in your group's possession for centuries, in a safe deposit box in Switzerland or something like that, or real Dan Brown's kind of stuff, really. And these sacred objects were used in some magical rituals, which are no longer used now, and the rituals themselves have also gone into the ethers, and except that they've been used by your group forever. And oh, sorry. Whoa. All right. And that was kind of spooky. If one is into that kind of thing. So you've got your collection of sacred objects here. The other thing is that you would have to show, and I've got here some, or maybe you've got some ritual invocation that nobody else has got. Come down from ancient Egypt or something, again, which has never been published anywhere at all. It doesn't exist in any museum. It doesn't exist in any private or public collection anywhere. And again, authenticated, carbon dated to the particular time that you claim that your group started. So you've got this original invocation, which is obviously a source of magical or mystical or some kind of psychic power. And again, exclusivity. You're the only group that has this invocation. Again, linked to your founder or founders. And then, of course, you'd have to also show, or you'd have to argue that, there's some kind of psychic, mystical, magical power is literally transmitted from master to apprentice. So, the founder had this magical, mystical power, and he initiated person B, and they initiated person C, and you have to show a lineage going right back, and an unbroken chain of command, or an unbroken receiving of this spirit, if you like, or Holy Ghost or something, and that's just been carried on throughout the centuries. Sort of the flame has been carried. Imagine a bit like a sort of a relay race, and you have the baton, and you start, some person A starts with the baton and passes it to person B, and you're going around the track, and it's the same baton that's been passed from one runner to the next, and it's the same, so each runner has the original baton, which means they can remain in the race. If it was another baton they picked up somewhere along the way, that wouldn't count. So you have to have these are the basic criteria for showing that you're genuine and authentic group. But I mean, well, this assumes a couple of things. It assumes that there is some magical psychic power which is transmittable, which either comes from some collection of sacred objects or a book or a founder or laying on of hands or some kind of invocation that's repeated by a succession of masters or whatever, that initiates the person coming up in the ranks or whatever. This assumes a magical universe, some kind of psychic and psychicism, a psychic power is present, which somehow carries the essence of a non-duality spiritual power along with it, like a sort of stream, as it were. And it also assumes that ancient knowledge is better than modern knowledge. I mean, this collection of books, it could be like it could be just the texts themselves, and nobody's commented on them. Nobody's actually made them any better by comments, and and you'd think really that a collection of literature would have had to evolved from one central sort of rather rudimentary document to a whole canon of comments and observations done by a whole load of people from that time till now, so that things evolve and things get better, and things change, or not get better exactly, but change over time, as indeed the laying on of hands. I mean, this energy. Why should it be static? Why should it be thought of as being something which never changes? You'd think that this thing would be changing all the time, unless, of course, you assume that this God or source is immutable. It doesn't change. It doesn't change its mind. It doesn't change the power of it. And if we're talking about love, the love never changes. So it's kind of a static thing. A big assumption to make, I would argue, really. And so I mean, I don't know whether such a group exists, really, and whether it's worth joining, because it seems to me that a group claiming so many authentic criteria for itself is not necessarily going to be a great group. Because unless you buy into all this thing about the same baton passed from one runner to the next, as it were, otherwise it doesn't count. Unless you accept that assumption, really you're not going to take much notice of this thing called magical lineage at all. And unless you buy into the thing that everything that's ancient and dead must be better than everything modern and alive. Unless you assume that as well, you're not going to really pay much attention to claims of sort of claims of antiquity. That's the word I'm looking for. You're not going to be that impressed by antiquity, really. And you're not going to be even very impressed by founders, because a founder may have an idea. But then that idea could be expanded on and modified and made more and modernized even. And therefore the founder, although important, isn't as important as the person who is presently dealing with the issues such as Gnosticism today. And they might be applying them to a modern audience today. They might be putting Gnosticism into hip-hop music, for example. And therefore, you could say that they're being more, they're being more relevant today, because they're appealing to a lot of young people who are into hip hop, and they're listening to the Gnostic message, for example, through the medium of their particular genre of music. And whoever did that is surely doing a better job, as it were, than somebody who keeps on digging up the past and expressing mystical truths in language which nobody speaks anymore. Shakespearean English. No one speaks Shakespearean English anymore. No one can even read it anymore. And I mean, King James Bible. Nobody wants to read that. They don't understand what they're reading. They want to read things which are in the vernacular. And modern and everything. So I think, and you'd think that the Holy Spirit, if it was a Holy Spirit or spirits or whatever, they would be concerned to communicate people in the language and the style of modern times, rather than making people go back or look backwards in a nostalgic kind of way. But so that's just my sort of thoughts really on a so-called genuine magical order. Um, and in any case, finally, you have to be able to prove all these things, really, really prove them objectively using some kind of third-party source. And otherwise, really, there could be bogus claims, let's face it, with all due respect to you. So I don't know if I'm very impressed by claims of authenticity, as it were. I think that, either we're all authentic in our own way, or all of us are bogus in our own way, which could be true as well.